Lama Chöpa. I can see Lama Chöpa is my charging down to my also Yamlen Chair, the caress and that they give Chung and drinking down, and give Chimbi Lam Yimba, Yamle. I didn't Zakasanga to share it. Give Jingi Lam Yirim 2 more, give Jinda 2 more Lam Yirimba, Yamle, you go shiver it.
Good evening. So we're quite far now in the Lama Chöpa text, having completed all the previous practices such as visualizations, and thereafter there's applications and requests, and now we come to the part of, or have come to the part of great importance, which is having generated merit and engaged in purification and made requests to the Lama, we now receive his inspiration, his blessings, so as to be able to transform our mind through training in the graduated stages to enlightenment. These are graduated in that they are divided in accordance with the varying capacities or mental capacities of beings. So we've looked at the trainings that are shared with a practitioner of initial capacity, and last week we came to the almost to the conclusion of the trainings that are shared with a practitioner of intermediate capacity. And now we come to the final section, which is the trainings that are unique to a practitioner of supreme capacity.
And the last year that chick Deve come now, Suji come now, Sumi come said the nigger Chasada and the leather Numo with the Niki Olympic that Gio de la Coas. Chisadan, you Coa di, the Niki Coa de the Queen has a leather Numo around the Gio de la Tagu the Tengazu Gartungors and the Niki Koi near the Anji Delia and the Chiki. Gayu Chana be Chikilinga dance to Josa do Michasa and Dina Shinchen and I be Delia, Yun Mataji, Yendenya Tongche, and as some on the DRS, Chisan Denigi and Loti Papangures. Chisan de Denigi Lodi Pawala and then Ganis Pangure, that Labasum Yamlecha, Sutmi Labada, Tingizing Laba, Sherry Laba, Yamlecha, and the Papi Northern Yamlecha, Dushin, Yamlecha Balatine, and Tarpico to Ries. And the kissing out the Dico Shiva.
Last week, when we looked at the 88th verse, which is the second and final verse within the section of the trainings that are shared with the practitioner of middling capacity, we looked at what the meaning of samsara is. And samsara is the state of one is bound within the realms of samsara when one takes uncontrolled rebirth after uncontrolled rebirth. Samsara is a state bereft of freedom. And the reason for having no freedom is that our mind is under the control of our afflictions. And therefore, the karma we accumulate is contaminated by the motivation, which is influenced by the afflictions. And therefore, we have no control over our rebirth in that where we are reborn. So this is the state we find ourselves in. So samsara is to be understood as a state that where one has no freedom due to taking uncontrolled rebirth under the power of our karma, which is contaminated due to our afflicted minds. And samsara is experienced as rebirth in any of the realms, in any of the 6 realms, the 3 lower realms of the hell beings, spirits or animal realms, or the pleasurable realms of humans and demigods and gods. As well as, so those are the 6 realms of the desire realm beings, as well as the God realms of the form and formless realm. Within these realms is where samsaric beings take rebirth without freedom. But this is a state that we ourselves can gain liberation or freedom from. And freedom is the state where one is freed from samsara, freed from uncontrolled rebirth, due to gaining freedom from the afflicted mind, such as anger, attachment, and so forth. How to achieve the state of freedom? First. And so this is what we looked at last time, in terms of the meaning of samsara. And that we looked at over the previous 2 weeks, and specifically last week, we looked at the mistaken way we relate to samsara. We emphasize or focus on the delights, the pleasures of samsara, with the unrealistic expectation of expecting a lasting happiness, a happiness worthy of striving for. So this was expressed in the line, seeing samsara as being like a pleasant garden. And then we started to look, but didn't complete it, how to gain freedom, liberation from samsara. And this was presented first through the 3 higher trainings of the higher training in ethics, the higher training in concentration, and the higher training in wisdom. And the second method presented in the verse, which you didn't get to look at last week, is that of the treasure of Arya jewels. Last week then, I wasn't able to cover the what is meant by what are the treasure of Arya jewels. So here we can, looking then at the last 2 lines of the 88th verse, and thereby grasp the banner of liberation, upholding it with the 3 trainings, so that we did look at, and the treasure of Arya jewels. The Arya jewels, or is the riches of Aryas, there are 7 of them. So the 7 are firstly faith, secondly ethical restraint, thirdly listening, fourthly generosity, fifthly embarrassment, and 6th is shame, and 7th wisdom.
This is Papi Norris, the Papa said in Anjuki, Dajin Brigade, Gassa, Sosuki Buddha, and Lamla Shuba, the Mashuba, Sekansa, Nietzsche. Lamla Shuba, the Sosuki Buddha, Papa said Nietzsche, and the Solamna, Jolam, and the year and the Sosuki Buche. That Tolam said, Toyadu, Tolam Mata, Gomlam, but this was the Papi Kansach. Tolam Toyadu, Papi Kansa Chavar, no Gomlam, then the Dajin Badike, the Papi Kansa, Hesigo, down the Papi Kansa said that Tolam Gomlamba, and the Tolam Token Yanchele Chazada, Papi Kansa Sigurwada.
One will often hear the expression ordinary beings. So an ordinary being is in relation usually to an Arya being. So we can understand then ordinary beings themselves of having 2 divisions, those who have not yet attained a path, and those who have attained a path. And that those who have attained a path would refer to the 2 ordinary paths, the paths of accumulation and preparation. So these are the 2 divisions of ordinary beings, those who have and who have not attained a path. Arya beings are those who have not only attained a path, but have attained the path of seeing or higher. These are Arya beings. And an ordinary being it would be, in this way of dividing it, a non-Arya. So either a practitioner who's achieved a lower path, or a practitioner who is yet to achieve a path. But an Arya being is someone who has achieved a path of seeing or higher.
다 지난 너를 남나 너를 세디 규절하려고 규절하라. 지상 아즈를 가려래. 저게 강바 아니 지게 뭐다 아니 지게 거서서 고액이 둘러 사기 아니 지게 칼라 아니 지게 조선다의 그 무이다 세상은 좀 너르세 오라다 너르세디 가르선 디수 너르 아주 너르와 지딘비 너르 지상은 저 때려가셔야 디수 샤사 당은 저기 아주 배주다의 차사디 너르샤도 그래서는 디수를 때네 나 저기 동화 세야다 당한도 지딘비기 동화 세야다 다 지기 디기 지기 중세 주변에 차산 디솔 때는 주고 그러지자 너르세도 규절하셔야지라고 그래.
In the text we have here treasure of Arya jewels. This word jewels is the Tibetan word not is often translated as jewels, but it has a broader meaning and therefore is also often translated as riches. So the broader meaning, it encompasses jewels like diamonds and gold, but also material goods of value, our home and all the contents of our home, our clothing and so forth. So all our material goods of value.
너를 세다 너르부 생이 되서 가래 너르부 남는다 저기 세다다 지금 바람다 디수리클 너르부 세지 제가 너를 납도 저기 배시다야 가서 그거 있잖아디게 예 주지 아주 배시다야게다 차산 디술 너르시 그래.
So here the more correct translation would be riches. So the treasure of Arya riches, so that it has the broader meaning. For those who have an interest in Tibetan, the word nor is the word for riches, and there's another word, norbu, which is the word for jewels. Where the confusion would have come with the translation is that the word norbu is often abbreviated to nor, and then can be either jewels or the broader meaning, riches.
당한 저기 잘라듯이 셰디게 아주 비슷한 지상한 저기 직딘비게 노르세요. 진짜 박배 노를 가려라는 대바다 수림나 퇴바다 동화다 셰랍다 뭐살 체여디게 박배 노래스. 진짜 뭐 파바디기기 가르레스나 박배 노라고 해야 가르레스나 파바디기리 아주 그래서 동화세야다 디기두야리아 칼라세야다 둘로가야다 나 겸경로야다 지 비슷한 거로 봐. 지사 파바 남기 가르쳐서는 대바다 수림나 퇴바 동화 셰랍 뭐서 체여 되술라티네 소소라랑기 아니슨 셈ля 되기주야다 아는 몽바의 띵이 되어 토야기 아니 저게 규샤상 탈바다 탐지 캠표 고바 토야기 차선 규 될라텐데 죽투고래 셴 디기주야 셴이 동화세야라 셴이 디기주야라 되술라티네 죽고래 그래서 파바 남기 대순 조 냠는 제제 배슈 디당 라신니가 디기요야다 라신니가 그 강한 세야랴 대수 배슈 된 거로와 제 비슷하던 파부에 넣어서 올다.
The word riches, then we can understand in terms of what is meant by or seen as riches by ordinary beings and seen as riches by Arya beings. Worldly beings, what we value, what we would consider riches, will be our material possessions of value. Why? Why do we value them? Because we make greater use of them in order to experience happiness, overcome suffering. An Arya being with a greatly developed mind, they too see things as having great value, and therefore, because they can make greater use of it to achieve happiness for themselves and others. But what they value is quite different. So for us, as ordinary beings, our home and all the possessions within our home, our motor vehicle and so forth. But for an Arya being, it's these 7 riches of Aryas: faith, ethical restraint, listening, generosity, embarrassment, shame, and wisdom.
And in the end, the Debata Chujimna Toba Tonwa Sherap, Nemosa Teo Sadige, and Janjusemba the Lamna Sugan Solamba, the Jolamba, the Subish, Yamnichigorwa, 다 나라서 규례 나라서 지인에 나라서 대바여랑 아주 주름여래 퇴비한 직 퇴바 지고래 는 진배인 냠나 진바 동아용고래 는 와사시아바다 체유 안제바지 셰랍다 안주기로 여러와다 디네기 여러와 디네자다 아니 파변 자기도 와다 나서 소수기부 소람바도 저람바도 나서래도 하는 나서서 투모들이도 와서 베게 삼로 연구로 와다 인지미지 박박이 너를 책명 안줘요 너를 책도 세상 안줘는 이 투모와 책도 왔어.
Hearing the list of the 7 riches of Aryas, one may well think, but these aren't unique to Arya beings, surely. Certainly those on the path of preparation and path of accumulation, but also ordinary beings such as myself. We have these riches on our continuum, do we not? So are these riches unique to Aryas, or they're shared with us? Because, for example, ourselves, we have faith, we have ethical restraint, listening, generosity, embarrassment, shame, and wisdom. We have these. So, are they really unique to Arya beings?
내가 디서 가지길래 연구를 가지기 내지게 가지기 비슷한 걸 가지고 너를 자고래 완전 진짜 초람바다 남루시는 초람바다 저람바드서 냐면 디순나도 디속에 너를 자고래 이내다 파부에 너를 세 지단에 지당 가지고 지고래 이내 또 파부에 너를 세라고 하되 송 지민디도 자야지 김장에 가르쳐서는 파부 안 남기 안되니기 지게 추림단 대바다 대수 페인디 용어숨도 통제는 호로 속에 인직 덴베기 니수디 용어숨도 통위 냠수 용외 통에 아니 저 냠수 링규어 반자 파베 노라세 되고 누스진에 샤바리마도 당아 저기 노르마인 바다 소소기비 노르마인 바 가야 말해.
It is correct that we have these 7 riches on our continuum. And so certainly do those on the lower parts of accumulation and preparation. But the reason that here the word Arya is applied, and why this grouping is linked to the word Arya, is because, well, firstly, what defines a being as being an Arya being is someone who has realized emptiness directly. They have seen the truth or reality directly. So for such a being, they have seen the benefits of these riches based on their experience of having attained the paths of seeing and so forth. And therefore, they utilize these riches, whilst we also utilize them. The way Arya beings utilize these riches is quite different. They utilize them based on their explicit or direct realization of their great benefit.
지난번에 조위기 전에 조위기 전에다 밥에 넣어두었어. 개보도 조를 앞에 본보지 표현도 아 저기 대표형보다 본보도 님도 구송하다 되는 게 망고시 리거 되나 아주 구송할 리거 말와 본보도 리거를 했어요. 대 리거 되나 디나데 다 조디 본보도 해야 돼요. 와거나 지난 디 조그런 비교해서 그런 조인자 디체네 본보 비교해서 디다 좀 별로 망보시 리거 되나 산다데 비교해서 기시가 본보도 비교해서 디나시 소람바다 저람바다 냠리 nengo를 아주 길에 요르데 이내 조 단이 게 차와 파베기기 냠리 돼서 답변 뉴바이 마소나 게 뉴바 차와로자 옛날 마소나 공도 제수 캐바도 파바 인자네 디체네 파베 너드인세는 조 주의 천의 명파도 스타바래 명답이 김전디다 파베 너드인세는 파베 진 자급이 김전디래다.
The reason that the term Arya is linked to these 7 riches is because we can maybe understand it through an analogy. If we see someone famous approaching, someone who's surrounded by bodyguards, we will say, oh, here comes the famous person. The bodyguards will get no mention. So similarly, whilst ordinary beings like ourselves, we have these riches on our continuum, we're not the main utilizer, the primary utilizer of them. Certainly not when compared to how an Arya being, a being who has realized emptiness directly, how an Arya being makes use of these same 7 qualities.
상주 덴바시들에 밥에 덴바시라기로와 동아 덴바 군주도 보고 람딘 밥에 덴바시로와 제자다 동아 덴바도 군주 덴바도 되게 냠네 두스네 제바제 두스네 냠네 지인들 고노주기 밥에 덴바시세 덴바시데 하나주 된 최냠네 덴바시 냠네 제고고를 내 밥아 넘기 동 고된디지 뭐서 톱 덴바 뭐스는 또 베토네 냠네 지기해서 돼 밥에 덴바시 있어야지 저 동아 덴바디게 당 군주 덴바들 밥에 덴바라고 그러면 제 파바야 안에 동아 덴바 군주 덴바디 파바래서 뉴뉴로 와다 이용해서 소소기보다 맨일야 안주 마 동아 덴바도 안주 마 여러 동아 덴바도 숙제로 와 이내다 밥에 덴바라도 동아 덴 밥에 동아 덴 밥에 덴바시라고 그러와 동아도 밥에 덴바라 뒤에서 밥이 원숨도 통제 원숨도 또 아니 원숨 또 안에 냠는 거 봐서 밥에 덴바세지.
Another analogy which should make this clear is a term we're very used to hearing, Four Noble Truths. So here this word noble is the English translation for Arya. So one could say the Four Arya Truths, or the Four Truths for Aryas. So why is the word Arya or noble attached to the Four Truths? And it's because they are true for an Arya being. They are truths for someone who has directly realized emptiness and thereby has a true cessation on their continuum. Non-Aryas certainly can and do practice the Four Noble Truths, but they are not yet truths for them. There is, depending on the level of training, a definite conviction but that these are truths, but they haven't been directly realized yet. Only when the practitioner becomes an Arya being, realizes emptiness directly, are those four truths for that practitioner. So just like that, these seven riches are called the seven riches of Aryas, or the seven riches of noble beings, because based on their experience of directly realizing the truth or reality or emptiness, due to that experience, the way they utilize these seven riches is quite different from ourselves, from non-Arya beings.
대바를 유대비 유대를 건조숨라 건조를 대바 렌젤을 대바 세다다 두신에 눈고를 대바세 대바세디 건조를 대바 렌젤을 대바 균제 레 균제 세디를 대바 세디 눈고를 진짜 내내자는 상계를 대바 철을 대바 균들을 대바 세다 되네기 근데 지금 대바세다 아주 건조숨 겹 건조숨 요래 선배게다 되네기 이체비교로 링기디 이체비 이체데 내 대바차고로 대바 되네시 차고로 봐 아주 라말에 대바세다 디수로다.
Just before I come to Kendall's commentary, he's starting to look at the seven, starting with faith, just to, as a translator, again emphasize that the way we use words in the Dharma, of course the Dharma in English, is the meaning of the regular English word is often a little or sometimes even very different from how it is utilized in society. So there will be a few words here in this list of seven where the meaning in the context of the Dharma is quite different from how we utilize in the same word in society because of a variety of influences. So words that won't come up tonight that in the Dharma context have a different meaning to how they're commonly used in society will be the great love, great compassion in particular, as well as renunciation. They have quite a different meaning in a Dharma context, as will be some of these seven words we come to now, starting with the first one, that of faith. So to get them, because of the sometimes negative connotations of faith in English, where it's often seen as blind faith, one can relate to the word faith as rather utilizing trust or conviction, which have a very different feel for us in English, but work quite well. Okay, now to come to Genda's commentary. So the first word, that of faith, is where one has faith in virtuous objects such as cause and effect, the three jewels, or one's Lama. So with two objects such as that, one has unwavering trust or conviction or faith.
lunga yuschala nyoba chena tigmare sembe chigme sembe sung sambade ane je chutim seade chawade denegi da benenge lunga nyeje tembe chutim seada ane ya jige janju sembe ke chutim seada nes na sangi tembe chutim seade ne ngore ine chaza donda garasene di to chole ya nyeje di jigme sembe ke di jigme sembe samlode da sungwe sambade chutim sigore.
The second is that of ethical restraint. The ethical restraint we understand as being restraining one's physical behavior, one's verbal communication, and primarily restraining our mind, our way of thinking. And this comes with the conviction, I will not harm others in any way, not through my physical behavior, my communication, or my way of thinking. I will subdue my mind, restrain my mind, so that I do not harm others in any way, and thereby restrain my mind from coming under the influence of the afflictions. Another way one can understand ethics is through what supports excellent ethical restraint, and that is vows, such as the Bodhisattva vows and the Tantric vows, where one makes the vow or the pledge not to engage in behavior of physical, verbal, or mental behavior that is contrary to the vows one has taken.
달lunga yisum yeje dimbe surim saydi nga joge da rabjung membe kimba chasan gyula ane surim sunya yede bachi chagor jizade kimba rabjung membe kimba ine da lunga gi junshig me sambe samlu juena ane nga gi jun mo dombe gi surim yare ane jige jun da lu yugane ane jige kuma me sambada shala netse jige me sambe samba samlu yubana ane dischasane lu yugan dombe surim jiza lunga yisum yugane shala nöbadan sewa jawa jige me sambe nöbe jawa jige me sambe samlu yubade di surim le da nganzu di chasan gyulu yidege nyamnajiya yudeba chagore.
The ethical restraint of guarding one's vows is something that is not at all unique just to ordained practitioners, but there are many vows of great importance that are shared by non-ordained practitioners as well as the ordained, such as, for example, restraining our physical behavior through not stealing, restraining our speech, our verbal communication through not telling lies. So these and many others, both the ordained and non-ordained, have in common, and they have as their root the determination not to harm others at all.
Andi najinda rabjun zola dat surim manga chagore bene rabjun zo changdung me sambe samlo yorwada di changdung me sambe samlo de surim re chang sungwi ge bangbi surim chang 동매 선배 삼로 주름 차고라 안 김발에 있나 아니디 지단 장 동매 선배게 삼로 송고스가요 말하데 니고 니디리 지단다 안줄람 랍중 디게 상기기 되는 랍중 장 동매 선배 담자 켈린 제바 인자디 송고고라 지단 주름 디레 디나신 당아 저기 전시 선배 domba 슈베 있나 주름 마 차고래 아니 디나신 나기 domba 슈베네 야지 송고야 주름 마 차고래.
Whilst there are many vows that the ordained and non-ordained have in common, there are, of course, a vast number that the ordained have that are unique to the ordained. For example, the ordained cannot partake of intoxicants at all, whereas for the non-ordained, abstaining from intoxicants is not obligatory. That being said, in addition to this level of vows, there are further levels of vows that both ordained or non-ordained can take in God, namely the bodhisattva and the bodhisattva vows and the vows of tantra.
Chopa nye chö shue dirwa chö shue de denigi da chopa la de chö amchol ya ngot chö shu je da samlo na ya denigi da shubi ge samlo sim ji yor wa da ga je di chopa che yor wa.
The first of the 7 rituals of Aryas is the faith, the second ethical restraint, and now the third, that of listening. There's the term listening, sometimes also translated or often translated as hearing, and sometimes translated as study. This means hearing a lot of teachings. So when you hear this term, especially when expressed as hearing or listening, understand it's not merely passively hearing teachings. It includes reflecting or contemplating on those teachings, thinking about the meaning of those teachings. So this is the third richness, that of hearing teachings.
Some the mother na digoro vadene. That two some so the Tuje di dona de le hane yando samba de le te sam siure. Church shu nye to pash nye je di dona de pa sam da de le sam te sam siure. The next some died. Jisan Tuje dona some da sam. Jisan that the turba said that the public northern turba said te the nigi Tuje dona some big te sam said the pashedi in Jure. Tjöba nye jiburu wada. Nye tjöba la nye jibu amchul gone penanga juge shimiru de kirudo jiko de nganzo omane pe mongol ko tjögiru wada. Tjöba la deni jiko wada. A chö tö so la ne ngi nye ba yin sa jing ko sun jis. Ta sam la bi de tö sam la de tjöba ge tö jin de da tilya yane no sam dai lo de la sam tö sam sigo.
Where you'll be most used to hearing the term hearing or listening is in the three within hearing, reflecting, and meditating. So there, the meaning is slightly different from here. There, hearing emphasizes in hearing, reflecting, and meditating. Hearing emphasizes that of receiving the teachings. It includes reflection, but it emphasizes receiving or hearing teachings. And there follows reflection, the repeated meditation, as we use the word meditation in English, the analytical meditation on the topic. Here, in the Arya riches, I think this term hearing incorporates reflection. It doesn't emphasize hearing, but incorporates hearing and reflection together.
Towa se di towe ki jimba se ore jimba la na anzu ge da towa la du da pa tingi chen ya jik pen ya anzu le koncho le na da koncho le jik phugi se be samlo ta shen le na da koncho le na ya phuye la ma da kin du na yin na ya phu se ro da pa jigin se be da shanda ma na jigin odgi ma koncho le jigin se be samlo ji pena shen le ya phan dunga se ya da digi tu ya ode ka khala ina ra du lo ina da karina hi ma jigin se be samlo de ton we se ba se ro de ni samlo de di de ton wa se jimba se de jimba ngon jimba di de da a ju ge ya phu yu sam ba da an shen le jigin se be ton we sam ba de jimba se ro de ni samlo de jimba ton wa se ro de da an ju ge 땡이 빈 칼라지 빈 키 심전 교질이야 칼라지 지긴 선배 삼로디 에 짐바는 원인들이 다 파테기 칼라지로 어디 짐비 제래 진배 제래 지금 mani 제기 제디 진바 말에 진배 제디래 진바 제디래 다 진방원이 파 지금 삼로디래 다 찌긴 선배 삼로디 디 동화세디래 동화세 진바세디.
The fourth is that of generosity, or literally giving. So generosity needs to be understood as a mind. It's the wish to give, the wish to be of benefit through giving. And it's most usually explained through that of material giving, but it's really giving whatever one can to benefit others. So the emphasis here, generosity really needs to be understood as being the wish to give. One may often give something, and that's what one gives would be the substance that is given. For example, if a dog is hungry and one wants to give it food, the food that one gives the dog is the substance that is the substance of the act of generosity. The actual generous act is the wish to give. Whether there is a substance to give or not, the act of generosity is the wish to give, the sincere wish to be of benefit through giving of oneself to others.
다 소소랑게 삼나냐 도스지 되지네 당아주기 소소기다 뉴자라 간신나 셴야 동아세야다 셴 디기 주비하게 된달파 찌긴 삼백에 당긴 삼백에 소소기 롱죄나 찌긴 소소기 수부게 샤고원절라 샤찌긴 차고원절라 차찌긴 달류 롱죄 차상야 안에 직신 고원절야 판도 치도 파찌긴 판도바네 될야 찌긴 삼백 디니게 삼노디 파 자야래 and I together, so Lu Lonja, Chasayana, Rangel Lama, and Goncholia Pugins, the Pugins and Big, those Lu Lonja Ghetto, so Gawasa Jaganada, so Lu Nada, so Lonja, Karen Chasaya, Lama Pugins and Big, let's be somebody, the nigger somebody, Anne and Diada. That's also Lu Lonja, Karen Shelia, Digitubia, Shenji Ganga said that Digitubia, Duaselia, Shelia, taking, stunking somebody, somebody, Diana, Yana, Jim, and Tangu, reserved. The nigger sometimes do sometime do some that they were there. Jimby Yamlin, Jimby Compass, or Jimby Dawson Bell was it, Jimbo Compass, or Jim Comseti, then some that they had a
To mention the previous segment, generosity is the wish, it's a mind, it's a wish to give. And it counteracts the contrary mind of miserliness, the self-centered wish placing one's own needs first and foremost. This is the mind of miserliness that is countered by generosity. And generosity can be expressed very broadly. Of course, there's material generosity, but there's also the giving of one's body, for example, through giving blood. There's also generosity of giving one's skills and talents to others. And the way, though, one is encouraged to cultivate the mind of generosity is to develop the wish to give, to offer everything that one has to the three jewels, to one's Lama. And to do this meditation again and again and again, this is how one trains in generosity. One can understand through this illustration, it's not that when one engages in this meditation, it's not that thereafter all one's material possessions are given to the Lama or to the three jewels. That's the offering substance. The training in generosity is to develop this sincere wish to give of oneself to others, and to develop that again and again so that it arises spontaneously.
Pandos Kayar did us some Sigua. Chizana Sangia Rang, Lama Rangia, the Beji, the Ungoma Ineda, Carson Susugia, Lami, Shendun Chibi, Chekilia, Lama, Shendun Chepalia, Beju Tangua, Beju Tangochi, Sigorda, that Shengi Dandalia, Lamigi, Shenle Pando to Dusin and Gubasa, that Shengi Danda, Jewana Chiroches. 제사 디스모르 제사 디네자 다 라마 Puja 라미게 결혼 안디 디 결혼 딜미딜 여러분 제가 결혼 내가 디제쇼 진짜 라소 제후 판도 제투고로 제사 라마야 라미게 야 상계다 라마야 소수류랑 차상 표해디 소수기 셴 라미게 셴는 주베야 튕긴다 책임님 최도 안에 도시네 배주 따로 제세 도시네 표해게 도시네 삼라 다제 도 다에 디량죠.
If one is wondering, what is the benefit of offering one's body, one's virtue, one's possessions, all of this to the Buddhas and to one's Lama? Well, it's not because they have a particular need for our possessions and our body or virtue. It's rather training our mind. So in the practice of generosity, we are offering all these things, developing, and we're offering with a sincere wish. Whatever I have, I know you will utilize it in the best way possible to alleviate suffering of others. Therefore, to alleviate the suffering of others, I offer everything that I have to you, because you will utilize it well. So that's the meditation, that's the mental training. Developing this well, creating vast stores of virtue, one will later have the opportunity for the Lama to give you direct guidance. For example, please help me by doing this or engaging in that activity. Here, through one's training in generosity, making offerings to the Lama and the Three Jewels, when one is now given an opportunity to express that generosity through following the Lama's instruction, perhaps by teaching or helping others, one will readily accept. One will not experience an inner obstacle of, I can't do that. Because one's mind has been trained, because one has trained one's mind well to utilize all one's skills and talents, possessions and body to be of benefit to others. The Lama then will give you those opportunities to do so in a truly useful way.
이제 저기 삼로디 동외 삼바세디 바 부두 전 장장아도 동외 삼바 뉴베 철철 당고 거래. 진짜 진비 팔진 냠는 조 거래. 마조바나 상게 투야매래. 진짜 진비 팔진 기 냠는 조 거자 되니게 동외 삼바디 냠는 파 뉴벌 마선 탈친 거 거래다. 야야라 철철. 진짜 당간 저기 니 고의 김전 가려는 동외 삼비게 도초데 세나들이 세나 어데 세나 디뇨모 바래 디가 나도 라신 니가 뉘고래 진짜 디뇨바인자 안 디마 매바서고래 디매바서 와라 동에 셈바 공고래 제 진짜 동에 셈바 공고바 디니기 공고의 규선들이 진짜 동에 셈바 매바나 아 저기 세나 요바나 소설에 변조가 같이 요네 현에 로 제기 고합요네 로 지금 말한 안 고고에서 세나진 아니 드누 디가야 아디 드누 갈고 해서 집변에 변조 전부 요겐디게 고소래서 전부 제디게 세상디 센터디 지거로와 진짜 되니기 동에 셈바데 장바나 여기 즉 동에 셈바데 배 야고 주식 전부 제베나 아니 소소기 튕겐다 되니게 현에 로제 고합라베 되니 로제 투야데 나 강하면봐 남사 로제 투고 제거로와 진짜 되니자 동에 셈바 장고야디 디데 제가 대시 수줌세야 되고 송고에 가서 lunga 26권 내주 지금에 선배 송고에 맞아 맞아봐이나 지금에 선배 삼로디 땅고 거디 당이 구만 구고 마데 구마 구매 선배 삼단에 가르쳐 왔으면 배 삼로 용식이로 와다 이내 당아도 구마 구매 내주 지금에 선배 샤는 쳐 지금에 선배 삼로디 배 누가 슈처처 땅도 야 누가 탈진 봐 쓰고 거래 탈진 봐 쓰고 놓고 검고 거래 마검나 탈진 봐 제거 말아 디네자 아니 수줌 디니 송어디 추름이 도저히 전에 세위 삼바들이 제가 디 매바서 디가 저기 뒤에는 녀모 바래와 디 매바서 발라 도저히 삼바 송위 삼바디 봐 야내야도 고묘디 아니 곧 고묘디 아니 곧 뉴바 체저 가슴 지고 예매바 뉴메서 용로 당아서 추름 마송 와 있나 자디 세위 삼바 제기 나도 삼로 요 말에 이내 겐지 테나 남사 세위 삼바 레용 거래고 겐 마테바디 매바시 겐지 테 레용 거래 지나가도 수름 검지 냠는 제네 제바이나 겐지 태베네 뇌체에서 받을 리투고 말 지나는 아주 그 다디 검고를 해야지 김새로서 가는 뉴버처 땅고 그래서 그러와도 두스와
let's explore a little further two of the riches that we have already covered, because this can also help illustrate the meaning, the purpose of meditation. So we're looking at the fourth richness of generosity. So this needs to be developed within oneself. Even if one considers oneself a very generous person, even if one considers oneself a person who readily gives of oneself to others. Because no matter how developed the wish to give is within oneself, you're not a Buddha yet. To become a Buddha, the 6 perfections need to be developed to the point of being perfected. And the first perfection is generosity. So therefore, the mind wishing to give needs to be developed within oneself to the level of a Buddha, the perfected level. Otherwise, Buddhahood cannot be achieved. Moreover, the contrary mind to generosity is miserliness. Miserliness is an affliction. Being an affliction, it harms oneself, it causes oneself to suffer, and especially when it's expressed, harm will come to others too. For example, when under the influence of miserliness, despite having the capacity to help others, one will not. Bearing in mind, generosity is the wish to give. So what does not happen when one is under the influence of miserliness? Even the mere wish to help others, to give to others, doesn't arise, let alone the actual giving. This is where we see how miserliness limits oneself, keeps oneself small and restrained. Whereas if one has meditated, bearing in mind the synonyms for meditation, habituation or familiarization, where one has become habituated to a virtuous way of thinking and weakened or broken the habituation to a non-virtuous way of thinking, becoming to the extent that one has become habituated to the wish to give, to generosity, one will readily seek out opportunities to be of benefit to others, to give of oneself to others. And if an opportunity comes one's way, a person who has developed a strong outlook of a wish to give will notice that opportunity and take it. A person who's still very miserly will not even be aware of this opportunity. Moreover, a miserly person, if making themselves be generous, will do so with quite some reluctance, whereas a sincerely generous person will be of benefit to others with joy, with a light and spacious mind, taking delight in the benefit the other person is receiving. And the second richness that I want to review here is that of ethics. Ethical restraint. As ethical as you may well be now, I encourage you, as I did last week, train in all the aspects of being ethical. For example, if you don't kill, or you don't lie, or you don't steal, still cultivate the mind of ethics in relation to not killing, not lying, not stealing, even if you don't do them, because these need to be developed. The mind of not engaging in these needs to be developed to the state of perfection, a state of a Buddha, in order to become enlightened. And that will not happen if one has not trained one's mind. If one now has an aversion to particular non-virtuous acts, that has come about in dependence on having cultivated such a mind in the past. Those causes will be exhausted. So therefore one needs to cultivate ever further causes, so that if in the future, if those causes have weakened and one encounters the opportunity to engage in a non-virtuous action that one otherwise would not, one may well do so, to the surprise of others seeing you act out of character. That would happen because our habituation to those virtuous ways, those ethical ways of thinking, is not yet perfected. And how does it become perfected? Through meditating on this again and again, going through reasoning, thinking about all the reasons why to be ethical, why to be generous, the faults of not doing so, and then role-playing situations and how one can respond skillfully. This is the meaning of meditation. Thinking about situations analytically, with reasoning, again and again and again. In this way, we transform our mind. This is the meaning of meditation. This is the meaning of Buddhist practice.
네 ngosa sheba zi wa rang gyumse dibi chewa chile tsemba chile. Pena nga zuge jike je kangpa diwa buru chide bui jike nga jik dukdara shi le che lewe na jik dukdara dingi jike suwa sampe samdang we na dangpo kar samdang dene ki le yundu kabla dene ki nga zul suwa jabdu jik dukdara suwa jayla dene ki suwa ki jensam lewe na ta nga zul kar samgang sarga oda di ngay suwa na jike mare ngay chigi ngi tiso ba ngi ngarang dibu sago ores dip dugjares tadin ngi dibu san dig marwas ngarang dibu san sago di jingi sen dig mare san begeda deni ge samda jingi sugi me san begeda ko suye til sumba di dele ka so zemba suye sim dugjan suye de zemba dela ane di ngosa sheba sa chagor ba ngosa sheba be perju diro chwa andina shin ya 지게 소수의 지게 미제나 통솔이야 지 저 sabzara 지원에 이나 지 소수 지부 되게 갑려야 지 가서래 나 저기 베네 띵오라 심제 두라로 다디네 샨다지는 어디 심제 수교마디 디고야 다사시아지 소수 지부 되게 갑 두라서인데 되네 봐 아데 되네 서셔냐요 되네자 데니게 소소 지부 유디캅레 데니게 삼다 소소 김천데 제제 어떤 이수는 디금 지금만 전 디금 말에 삼제 김천 삼다전 또 삼제 뇌세 제바 될파 숭바들라 잼바들라 네 가서래 뭐사 셰바시고 지사 데니 자다 소소 지부에 나다 미망고에 나다 가와이나 아 저기 데니게 셴리아 네버체야다 쮸방한바 차야다 데니지다 레기오베나 소소라랑 오당에 디체는 되게 말에 네 디퍼사그리에 아니 네 두체는 야고요 말에서는 하나 소소라랑게 김첨다잔 제가 예죄받이 잼받을 되니기 지금에 선배 삼로디 예죄 잼베게 삼로디다 모사시아바디 개발에 디버지 그랑 김첨드시네 디버지 제할래 디비 자와 제발에 제해들이야 잼바이자 디송외 잼바 뭐 주름로 차로도 제사디 개발해. 어디 되는지는 무엇이야 봐서 그래.
Coming to the next richness, that of shame. So shame is one of the words, as well as the next one of embarrassment, that in our Buddhist or Dharma context has a meaning that is quite different. It's not exactly the same as how we utilize it in society. So shame refers solely to non-virtuous behavior that we've engaged in. Solely non-virtuous behavior. And when one has engaged in something non-virtuous, then recognizing that oneself, shame may arise. And the function of shame is, what I did there was wrong. I have done something non-virtuous, and that was wrong. I should not have done that. And why shame is a virtuous mind is because it then serves to impede our repeating that non-virtuous behavior in the future. This is why shame is virtuous. So to give an illustration, if for example, one is alone at home and one intentionally kills an insect. The mind of shame then would arise, reminding oneself, I've just taken a life. That insect, in its own way, it valued its own life. And I thoughtlessly took its life. I killed it. This is non-virtuous. I've created the cause for my own suffering, and I've certainly made another being suffer. I will not do that again. This is shame. I will not do it again is ethics. Shame, though, serves to make it less likely we'll repeat the behavior in the past. And shame usually, so it has these two aspects of being in relation to non-virtue, and it's something that arises within us in relation to our own behavior. So therefore shame usually, mostly arises when we're alone. It may arise in our mind when we with others. For example, if we act or speak in a way that's accepted in society, but doesn't live up to our own ethical standards, shame may well arise in our mind, perhaps when speaking to someone. But usually, mostly, it refers to, it mostly arises when we are alone.
Andang cheyoba sede dini dovure de gyumsenro samda de gyumsen de skara ma do che dovure pene da cheyoba sede anzuge da duran ro swege ji deneki kensamle de kaple cheyoba o da dingi ngedi tsöwene kol ningje kol nazin penema so duran chile nyochi na kol nazitang ko kanga chegi resembege ko 콜이야 강아 지기를 선배 삼다지 디제는 지금 말 콜 강아 지기를 곧 지게 나스단 거를 선배 셴 김천 삼다지 근데 소속이 디지버지에게 젬바 뇌세제 젬바이나 디체여 봐시고 데니게 삼마다제 뇌세제베나 체를 매 봐시고 디나싱아지 미모보여서 지리야 소속이 변에 기체되게 직두로다 누자다 데니게 발라비가 어댕이디 콘중이 딜라바네 코즐리아면 코 기우메바 차게래 코 강아 체게래 코 기우메바 차게래스 니네 등이 디마시네 야고도 시기와 말씀에 섬 젬바이나 파줘야 될 강아 체게래 기우메바 차게래 코 뭐가 말했음지 완은 디파 데니게 삼다제 디 직수다 안는 네 지금 넘주 두셔 돼야 돼 젬바이나 데디 태여 봐시오래 태여 봐시 다 소소 데지 모사셰바세디 소소라라게 어데 네디 넘주 두셔야 돼 딘신다 네 지금 말로 왔다 하는 지게 약보 지고 말씀 소소 김선 삼다제 시안에 넘주 두셔 돼야다 직수셔야디 송바이나 된 모사셰바스 딘이디 베네 아주 직수셔야디 송야디 지버 마셰바 송야 지버 임발라 아니 김선 삼다하데 지랑 김선 라하는 삼예시는 지금 말에 나 지금 말했으면 뱅아랑 삼다베나 디 모사셰바제 대신 어떤 네디션의 콜에 뇌로 고기우메와 차디고 아니 콜션의 디니션데 지금이노 선배 재미야디 아니 지수샤디 체여 봐서 김선대 신 김선대 신다 다 don다로지 그 송야디 직바이 맞지 녀제 송야 직바이 맞지
The sixth one then is that of embarrassment. So shame and embarrassment are very similar, but slightly different. So now just to say as the translator, in the illustrations before with shame, I made some errors. So I'll now correct what I said in with regard to the illustrations of shame, and also give the same illustrations to do with embarrassment, so to clear this up. So shame and embarrassment both are with regard to non-virtuous behavior, and they both serve as restraining us from engaging in future non-virtuous behavior. And therefore, they are, shame and embarrassment are virtuous ways of thinking. Where they differ, though, is our own way of thinking. So taking the illustration of killing the insect. There, when it's shame, one thinks, I killed an insect intentionally, that was non-virtuous to do, I've created non-virtuous karma that will lead me to suffer. So that is the mind of shame, and it's virtuous because one is likely to refrain from engaging in further similar non-virtuous behavior. Embarrassment, taking the same illustration of intentionally killing an insect, is now is more focused on, in this case, the dead insect, thinking, I've taken a life, the life that being values, and it may have even experienced pain in its death. So here, embarrassment is focused outward, but it serves the same function as shame, which is focused on oneself, in that it serves to restrain one from engaging in similar non-virtuous behavior in the future. And then the other illustration would be, for example, if one is speaking to someone and speaking inappropriately to that person. Embarrassment then would be thinking, what I said to that person caused them harm. They are perhaps upset by the way I spoke to them, or the words I used. I made them unhappy. That was not the skillful nor the appropriate way to speak to them. So that's a mind of embarrassment, focused on the impact of our words, in this case, on others. Shame would be thinking, in the same situation, that was a non-virtuous way to speak. I've created, strengthened my afflictions. I've created non-virtue, causes for myself to suffer. So shame is focused on oneself, and embarrassment is focused on others. So that is the difference between these two virtuous minds, which arise in relation to non-virtuous behavior that we've engaged in, and also both serve as restraints from us engaging in similar non-virtuous behavior in the future.
Mi mangboji nyamdu yodi kablia mi shandalya tik siksu bolaya da tik rang gyumchen odingi shen tik ma rang gyumchen de sam mata shen di shen shen le nugre sembe sam mata rang da shen ni gala sam mata che pe tik siksu boda gyunjue ra che jebe na den wo sam me ba da tel me ba se de ni samlo ti de ni ge kunlong jior ba shen le siksu bo la ye ki shen le chi chi de ni ge shi yin sembe shi ya ge de ba samlo jior ba di ngosamya바다 체 그래서 ngosam야바다 체면바서 삼로도 최고로 아주 다시 얘기도 그래서네 더 치코랑 가는 맛이 직디 ngosam야바다 체면바 자기 말에 지자는 ngosam야바다 체면바서야지 신랑 김선도 전에 직습시에 돼 맞음바다 신 김선도 전에 직습 맞음바제 바 직습시에나 되네기 시되기 되네 맞음비게 삼로디 아니 가소리 ngosam야바다 체면바서야지 네가 자고 하래.
What should be clear is both shame and embarrassment are consciousnesses. They are virtuous consciousnesses. Their contrary is usually translated as non-shame and non-embarrassment. That's a mouthful. In English, I think shameless. Shameless serves the same purpose. So being shameless is contrary to the arisal of the virtuous minds of shame and embarrassment. And one is shameless when one has no regard for one's behavior and the impact it has on others, so that non-embarrassment, or the impact it has on oneself, non-shame. So being shameless doesn't refer to the unethical physical behavior or verbal speech. Being shameless refers to a mind, to consciousness, not having regard for the impact of one's behavior on oneself or others.
어떤이 디라반 차와 맞아봐데 근데 미망고시 차와 저 소수게 어떤이 차와 맞아봐데는 아데 건축이 찍라그래 삼제 안 소수기 차와 제기 연구로 와 지난 차와 맞아봐 소유에 파 건축이 현 김선 제제 건축이 당 네디 맞아는 건축 가기 말에 삼제 현 김선의 제제 소수기 차와로 제베네 아니 가르쳐 그래 니기 가르송 소전 체와 지금의 선배 삼로도 바송 가셔와 가진의 체와 지고로와 지다지당 이디 제네 아니 이디 체와 맞지 있네 아니 지 콘주기 디 레그레 삼제 아니 디 마송 와 있네 마송 어디 송어디라 가서 송어스나다 체와 맞제 받이 샤체 체와를 제베 있네 아니 맞제 봐 샤야디 가래 뭐 삼매 받아 가서 체여 봐 책이 베스네 말해서 체여 봐 책이 말해서 그래서 샬레 세와선 네버를 와도 빼는 아주 직수피해야지 직수저다 아직 셰여로 와다 제사디 미차상 안지 미지를 견지 지교배나 차상 견지데 녜디 콜레 견지 마제배네 녜 견지 지금에 삼지 되어배네 미산다에 가지 라그리에 삼제 소소인의 견지 제 중국으로 와다 제사디 견지 제여도 삼로 가르다 선생 녜디 견지 마제바제 안 수되베나 권주기 날 직삼그리에서 디 금제 현 금제 삼다제 소수기 견지매 마제에 삼로도 파가르와 가지 견지 지거로와 세사 디니기 현 금제의 제네 견지 마제에 삼로 가야디 체매레베선 체여바레베선 말해서 체여바레 말해서 레고세 아주 가르선 대지 체여발랍나 미 현대기 금전 제제 네 직수부터 견제 제네 지금 말해서지 견제 제의 송제 견제 마제바 되바데 삼로디 체여바래라로와 다 체매바세네 견제 제바디 체매바로와다对吧 다 당도 어디에 견제 마제바 되나 미 현대기 지금 레그리에 겸제 소소 견제 마제바 송야데 파가바 있나 견제 제로라 가바 있나 안 가서 체여바 차기를 베선 디 체여바 말해지 네 레서 너네 다 발레 마서 당에 저세 군도 있나 네 창마동 뭐는 변으로 내가 저저 건도 미 현대기 병알이 시기에 재산 dien사 네 저세 비시 루근서 배 삼로 쇼로 저치 권액이 파비에게 삼로 저세 권액이 대지가 좀 디메 데네 삼마다바시 디제베네 아니 먼저 권액이 파 까제 가서 가야지 신 김천의 시제 응의디 권금에 디마곤베네 권바이네 미산다게 라기레선 권금에 삼바인다 디 체여바레베선 체여바 말해세 디나시 네 직수 직마셰바이네 미산다게 지 라기레 삼제 안 직수 시에디 파 까제 마셰디 까제네 아니 셰바이네 체여바 체기레선 체여바 말해세 이제서 세부
So Genla is now emphasizing the meaning of embarrassment by differentiating from how we utilize it in general in English. Because recalling that embarrassment and shame refer specifically to non-virtuous behavior. So to give illustrations of virtuous behavior, if one is, for example, an ordained person and thinking, oh, if I wear my robes out and about, people may criticize me and I don't like it, then that we normally call being embarrassed. But this is not what is meant here, because wearing one's robes is not non-virtuous behavior. Shame and embarrassment are virtuous minds in relation to non-virtuous behavior. Similarly, if you're talking with a friend and a third person is being criticized, and one thinks to myself, oh, if I don't engage also in criticizing this third person, then my friend will be upset with me or look badly upon me or not feel supported by me. So here one may feel a little bit embarrassed because one is not participating in criticizing the third party who's not there. So again, this is not an illustration of embarrassment because it's only in relation to non-virtuous behavior. I may have got the last example, the second one mixed up, but the first one was about wearing a robe, so that was definitely right. So let me just say that as well.
다 제가 뭐사 유바단 체유바세디 디비 자와 디비 자와지 제할이야 랑 김선의 전에 디비 자와데 마제바다 셴 김선 전에 디비 자와데 마제바 까바인 데니게 송외 삼로디 뭐사 유바단 체유바라고래 개위 자와지 제할이야 셴 김선의 전에 개위 자와지 제바 까바딜라 체유바라 그래서 내가 말해야지 다랑 김선의 전에 개위 자와 제바데 까바인 디안 뭐사 셰바스베스 레베스 말해서 제사디 말해서
Another illustration for this to be clear is if someone criticizes you for your Buddhist practice. You're doing some meditation, you can't engage with them, say, no, I'm doing my meditation today, and they criticize you for that. Then, even if you feel a little bad about this, this is not the Buddhist understanding of embarrassment. Meditating on these teachings is virtuous behavior. If you criticize for it and you feel a little uncomfortable, a little bad, this is not a feeling of embarrassment because it is in relation to virtuous behavior. Shame and embarrassment are virtuous minds that arise in relation to non-virtuous behavior, physical, verbal, mental, that oneself has engaged in, and serves to counter the possibility of us engaging in similar non-virtuous behavior again. This is how the words are used in the Buddha Dharma.
인지게 야고 마신 바는 가로시 인지게 마즈버스 미마파질 인지게 오당한 와서 인지게 내가 와서그리 경매했으면 콘sul 인지게 내가 와서그리해야지 경매했으면 되게 증오사서 저러와 어당아 드린 와서송이 인지게 맞을지 마신 바지 파잡지 와슈사송서 라 저러와다 와서서 저러와 디 저기 칸 마치게 와서서 라고르데 돈다 와서서 돼 말해
So I'll translate directly what Genla said, but it's not going to work so well for us. But anyway, so colloquially in Tibetan, we also use the word shame in a way that is not in accordance with the Dharma meaning, despite it being our language. So my English is quite broken, and I'm a little bit shamed or embarrassed to use it in front of you. Embarrassed works. I'm embarrassed to use it before you. So here, I may even say, no, I don't want to talk in English before people. I'm embarrassed to do it. So the word in Tibetan would be shame, but for us then embarrass works, right? So even in such a situation, it does, whilst I may use that word, it doesn't actually have the meaning of shame or embarrassment, because speaking to you in English is not non-virtuous behavior.
지상은 넘긴데 직진 비기 기시다 디디 베제 되네 베지단 거랑아 사지 대디 나 인지게 신문 내기 와서 배 삼로 지지되다 또 심주 지나 아주 대선 지게 삼로 쇼르와 심주 지나 가르레스 다도 곧 간에질 라고도 선배가 심주에 올와 돈다락 또 심주데 니 인지 잡나 나의 야고 잡마시디 콘주 나라야 지기 통청 당그레 선배기 소소로 통청 당그레 선배기 삼로실이거다 돈다 인보디르다 소소 뜻마 총 차그레 선배기 니 삼로래도 니 가르 차되어선 소소리아 차배기 땀 년자 소소 년자 차배 차화될 리고지 제산 니네지 삼로지 어디 나중에 나서서디 어디 나서서 지사서디 딩이 마신 바 제베는 콘주 신민은 나야 통조 당그레에서 비 삼로 디레다 뭐사세디 아주 직딘 비게시나 오가 마신 거절로 코디지 뭐사세디 나 통조 당그레에서 비나 통조 차그레에서 비 삼로 디레다.
So in the worldly context, we'd use the word shame, or probably we'd use in English the word embarrassed to speak English before other people. Or maybe we'd say the word shy. I'm shy to talk before others. But to look at that situation from the Dharma perspective, what is really going on is there's no arisal of shame or embarrassment for the Dharma meaning. What has arisen is one of the 8 worldly concerns, not wanting to, a fear of reputation, fear of criticism. Because if I'm embarrassed to speak English to you, it is because deep within, not conscious, but in my subconscious, there's the fear that you'll laugh at me, that you'll look down on me. Therefore, I'm feeling a little shy. So really what's going on here is the 8 worldly concerns are showing themselves.
Jidin Chökyi Gyaltsen, Jidin Chökyi Sedina, Rang, Tongche, Rang, Duena, Mena, Gagmar, Simbe, Jazan Tongche, the Maharua, Jidin Chökyi, Nangbe, Chön, Di Anzu, the Oding engine machine to Gabna, and Hangosa said some of the Jidin Chökyi Chadia. Nangbe Chön, Jidin Chökyi Ramato, Mosa said, and one in the Mare. That Mosa said, Mosa share Balamna, Gavachi, Mosa Mebalana, Doksho Dirwa, Chizan Mosa said, Dirwa, Gavachagarwa.
So therefore, hopefully it's clear what in the Dharma context shame and embarrassment mean. And hopefully now from that illustration, it's also clear that when we use these words in society, then it's not actual shame and embarrassment, but it's the 8 worldly concerns. In particular, it would be fear of criticism, fear of one's reputation, and to express it differently, of being looked down on by others.
And the sheriff said, Language, sheriff said, and down sheriff the logic moment, sheriff said, Language, sheriff, Lepada, Nyemba, Dijane Yakuyo Mare. Dijine Tiba Sago, Kiwachimang, Taba, Tamjiki Baba, Jigri, Dij, Genetic Mare, said, and Dijanada, Com Dinis Jagore, and do something Javachi words, Yapo down, and the Yawa, Duati, Yawa Nabache, Yawache, the sheriff said, Langi Nabachavad, sheriff said, and Dina the sheriff said, Chidangache. That dinner did not share them the Yaudu, dinner sheriff said, Dame about to be sheriff, Tomani to be sheriffs, and dinner sheriff Chasan Sudigur, what the sheriff said. Dondala sheriff said, Lengi, number Yawachi, sheriff, Lutillet sheriff Sigore.
Then, just very briefly, to the 7th of the 7 riches of Aryas, and that is of wisdom. So wisdom, there are many types. Wisdom of selflessness, the wisdom of realizing emptiness, and so forth. But here it actually refers to the wisdom of understanding what should be adopted and what should be abandoned, or what should be cultivated and what should be abandoned. So it's a wisdom. So wisdom, this word, English word wisdom, is also is better understood. In some contexts, wisdom is fine. In others, it's intelligence. So here, perhaps intelligence is better, where one uses one's intelligence based on prior knowledge of the hearing, of what should be engaged in and what should be avoided, abandoned. So it's a wisdom or intelligence of differentiating between what should be engaged in and what should be avoided.
On the days that I'm to get Labasmi Yamlinda, the Niki Papi, no to Tison Yamlin Chebala, Tine, and the Karim was in it, Numo by the Bangri, Numo Bang, and it Numo Saban Cheba Bang, and the Tarbi Yasen, the Tarpa said Togores, Tarpa Togores, Jazan the Niki Yamsu Limbala Chene, and Tarpa Totuba Lamigi, and Jil of the sauce. Tabi Jason Zimber Jingi Laws and Jason Zimbalana, Tarba said Jason said the Tarbalaja, Yomba Sabana Jabba Bangbade, that Jason said Tarbase. Did Zimba said, and Susicula Dini Tober show said, Dini Topic, let me Jingi love to so said that do sooner.
This then concludes the 88th verse. Looking at the last 2 lines, and thereby grasp the banner of liberation, upholding it with the 3 trainings and the treasure of Arya jewels. The 3 trainings of ethics, concentration, and wisdom we looked at last week, and now this week we've looked at the 7 Arya riches, namely faith, ethical restraint, listening, generosity, shame and embarrassment, and wisdom. And it's through engaging in the cultivation of these riches and 3 trainings that one reduces and eventually eradicates completely the afflictions together with their seeds. And in this way, one attains liberation, or nirvana, freedom. Here, so the Tibetan concludes with what we have at the start of each verse, please bless me, where one turns in with the visualization to one's Lama for inspiration so that we are successful in transforming our own minds.
Rajan Sama, and the Kuru Dunga de la Tagudu, Sembe, some Daje, and Tarpase Togu, Tarpat Togu, Sepi, on those in some diada, Disam the Yanata, Dinezada, Tarpatoyalia, and the Lunga Yusum Yukoneta, Meshalia, and Sivita, Dipasat, Tawin Chigme, Sembe, some dia, Diana, and some diare. Dine Deba City on Jugi, that conscious Dunga Tatala Tipi, new by the conscious Yoguri, Sembeki, Ya Deba Cheata. And Jiggy Chopa said on Jiggy that Yane and to Chopa that deploy La Sopa, and don't be Semba said, Tanga Jiggy, Lunga use Mukon the Shanla, Digi to be a Dunga, said and Lu launch Chazan, Gawa Karasav and Chazan, Janda Tangi, Sempiki, to send some Yana and Taya. Then Zada Jiggy Rang Gumsen, Shanda, Rang Niki Gumsen, Shanla, Nubi Java said, and Shanla Tivi, Samba, Javing, Nambi Java said, so in Jimia, Samba, some Tamada, that was a Sheba that Tuyaba. Nishirab said on Jugida, Jiggy Dushin and Nyomomba, the Payari, the Tinditenri, the Pawala and Jugida, and the Sena Dishi, Donala, the Sena said in Nyomomba, the Pangu Gore, she said that, deep by Nimbo, Don Semba said Yana and Kumuri, Simitam, sometimes the Sherab Chagore, she said that Shally, never than Sewa Chepana did deeper Chagore, she said the Pas Shally nurses Sungwe, Surimri, she said Diana and Sungore, Simbetin, sometimes the Sherab Chagore, she said that to share. It's not a dinaji, Damia Bato Tomba in some Tana Sherab Chagore, on those Chinans, Tangan the Yana and some diet, Yamlen Jedi did that in it.
Let's summarize then what we looked at tonight, so that in order to fulfill our longed for wish, and the same wish we share with others, to gain freedom from all the sufferings of samsara, all pain and misery, we need to strive in these trainings in order to achieve liberation. Liberation from suffering, freedom from suffering. And we looked at the 7, I'll just slightly change the order. The first is, there's a second in the order, but in a way it is the foundation of training, and that is ethics. The ethics of restraining our physical behavior, our speech, and in particular our mind, restraining our mind from coming under the influence of the afflictions. Then the second was that of faith in the 3 jewels, the Lama, and so forth, and cause and effect. And the third was that of listening, which includes that of reflection, so listening to many, many teachings on new topics, as well as those one has heard teachings on many times. Fourthly, that was of generosity, giving of one's material possessions, one's body, one's virtue, in any way, developing the wish to be of benefit, the wish to give. And then the 5th and the 6th were shame and embarrassment, which we hopefully understand clearly as relating to non-virtuous behavior of ours, shame being in relation to the harm that it brings to oneself, embarrassment to what it brings to others, and that shame and embarrassment are an aid to our cultivation of ethics, because it serves to impede our repeated engagement in such unethical behavior. And the 7th was that of wisdom or intelligence, the intelligence of differentiating between what we should engage in and what we need to abandon. So there are many types of wisdom, but here it refers not specifically to the wisdom realizing emptiness or selflessness, but that of differentiation, the intelligence or wisdom of distinguishing what should be adopted and abandoned. Thank you. We'll conclude there for tonight. Thank you very much.